Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Mr. Meyer's classroom. A couple new pieces of art up as I've been trying to move them around here and there. Today we have a great little lesson that goes along with our packets. It goes along with a short poem, and it's meant to be kind of a funny poem as well. It's called The Catfish. This poem can be found on page 39 for the ELA section of the packet. And today we're just going to break apart some of the figurative language, which is like the words that the author chose to describe its characters. We're going to break apart some of the word meaning, and we're going to talk about this poem and see if we can figure out what jokes or what humor the author was going for. Because sometimes when we don't understand all that figurative language or more difficult vocabulary, we might be sitting there trying to pretend like, ha ha ha, ha, this is really funny. But we might not totally understand why it's supposed to be funny, okay? And you don't want to be the guy in the movie theater looking around laughing when you don't know why you're laughing, because that person's always just more confused than the people around them.
Killer stuff, flies, stink bugs. It was a joke.
Ha 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 ha. So what we're going to do today is we're going to look through this poem and we're going to break it apart and we're going to talk about some of the different sections. We are also going to spend some time with some of the questions and try a few strategies that we might be able to use to figure out how these you can get to the answers easier. Now, I didn't want to bore you guys with just reading the story aloud to you. I know that many of you at home can probably just read the story yourselves. But for me, it's always important for you to hear a story before you read it, just so you have two opportunities to kind of digest it and understand what's going on. Now, I didn't want to bore you guys with just me reading it, so what I did was I reached out to a very highly regarded professor at Cambridge University. His name is Professor Edwin Gardner. And Professor Gardner is going to offer us a chance to hear this read in a more professional setting. So I want to send it over to him. We now take you live to the office of Dr. Edwin Gardner, where he will read to you the classic, The Catfish.
Oh, good morning, children. Welcome to my office in Cambridge. I am Professor Edwin Gardner, and Mr. Myers has asked me today to spend some time reading with you one of my favorite stories from when I was just a young chap. Today we're going to take a look at a story called The Catfish. Now, the catfish is a quite remarkable being in nature. A lot of times it is meant being fried and covered in spices and served. But in this situation that we're going to read about today, we have a different type of catfish. And this catfish has what's called a paradox. A paradox. And this paradox is between, is he a cat or is he a fish? Just like I sometimes try to decide, do I have a British accent or an Australian? You try to figure it out as we go through. Now, when reading this story, we want to make sure we pay extra close attention to breaking down the figurative language. And figurative language is a way of saying the words the author chose to make the story more interesting or to add more details. Now, as we're reading through, I would love if you could follow along. This is a story that I have enjoyed since I was just a wee lad. Me grandmother used to read it to me, and now I shall read it to you. The Catfish by Oliver Herford, from the Book of Humorous Verse. The saddest fish that swims the briny ocean, the catfish I bewail. I cannot even think without emotion of his distressful tale. When with my pencil once I tried to draw one, I dare not show it here. Mayhaps it is because I never saw one that the picture looked so queer. I vision him half feline and half fishy, a paradox in twins, unmixable as vitriol and vichy, a thing of fur and fins. A feline Tantalus, forever chasing his fishy self to rend. His finny self forever, self-effacing, in circles without end. This tale may have a moral running through it, as Aesop had in his. If so, dear reader, you are welcome to it, if you know what it is. A grand poem of humor and enlightenment. Boys and girls, thank you so much for coming and joining me here today. Hopefully you had a chance to hear this tale, not only from me, but maybe have a parent or a brother or sister read it back to you as well. Of course, you can read it also. That is all from me. Thank you very much for coming into my office. Hopefully I will see you soon.
Wow, what an incredible honor that was to have such a highly regarded professor take some time out of their busy schedule to come and talk with us. Thank you very much, Professor Gardner. Now, if you look at the back of our sheet, you're going to notice that we have a couple different questions to do today. Two of them at the top are looking for you to kind of pick out a word and either circle it or do some multiple choice work. That should be a little bit of work that is going to require you to go back into the text. Now, parents, when you get down to 3 and 4, these are things that you might have to set up for your student. 3 is a part where they're asking you to have a conversation with your student about the poem they just read. It also compares this story of the catfish to a Greek myth. You might have to do some critical thinking or some thinking outside the box to find that connection. What I would tell you as a hint is think about that idea of always wanting food but not being able to eat it and how that fits in with this catfish story. And down here, this short response, if you wanted to, you can have your son or daughter copy their short answer into any of the sections on Google Classroom, or if you want to send a private message to me, they can do the short response and I'll give them a little feedback as well, okay? If you just want to hold on to it yourself and grade it yourself, you are also very welcome to that. Please also don't ignore the parts that are inside the margins. These parts inside the margins are helpers that are going to get you closer to your answer or to help your son or daughter out. So once again, this was just a quick little lesson today about taking apart a poem and maybe looking at some of the language and figuring out where these pieces fit in or how this poem makes sense. What you might notice that you're going to be doing a lot is going back to the poem and trying to figure out these different sections, and that's totally fine. I always encourage my students to go back and reread the text to find where their answer is. If you even want them to highlight where they found their answers, that will work really well for them to make sure that they have the correct answer. If we can't find the answer inside the text, it might not be the correct answer, right? So whenever we can have that answer and then go back in the text and find where we found that, that helps us kind of reinforce or reinsure what we have as our answer. Also with the multiple choice, don't be afraid to eliminate or knock off some answers that you know that aren't going to be correct. And if you are doing that writing, once again, feel free to submit it to me. I'll take a quick look at it, and then I can get you back some feedback. If you want to do that all yourself, parents, that is totally up to you. I am not going to tell you that you need to submit it just because I'm not sure how many of them I will get. At this time, if you want to make sure that you are grading those, that is totally fine with me. So that's going to do it for me today. I have a couple different lessons that I'm trying to put together for next week. Parents, please pay close attention to Google Classrooms and any of your son or daughter's teachers and what they're putting out. We do plan to try to go forward with some of the work that we already have from the packet moving on into next week, but we do not know how long that will last. So please stay tuned to figure out where we will be going with instruction from there. That's all for me. Have a great night. Learn a little something today. Go Bills.